Prologue. Titan. The cold, distant surface of Titan was a stark contrast to the fierce activity unfolding on the orbiting station. The hum of massive machines reverberated through the corridors as engineers and construction crews worked tirelessly, their faces drawn and weary. Sparks flew from welding torches as the skeleton of a new heavy ship slowly took shape in the dock. A new class of vessel designed for war, yet the effort to bring it into existence seemed small against the vastness of the threat looming over them. The ship was large, imposing, even. But to Admiral Renzo Hyman, it felt too small, too fragile. He stood at the observation window, staring at the massive hull being welded together. Each seemed a testament to the exhaustion of the men and women who worked long hours under the harshest conditions imaginable. Titan's surface was covered in layers of frozen methane and nitrogen, and every breath in the station carried the sharp scent of industrial grease and the faint trace of fear. He could see it all from here. The burning effort, the workers, their slow movements, the exhaustion on their faces. Some were just kids, barely out of training, sent into the dark vacuum of space to build and to fight. They were the ones who would serve on these ships when the time came. But would they be ready? As the clamor of the station reverberated through his bones, Hyman felt the weight of the moment, the weight of everything. Humanity, spread thin across the solar system, clinging to the hope that they could carve out their own future in the stars. The new ships, the new weapons, they were all a part of that dream. But was it enough? He couldn't shake the feeling that they were preparing for a battle they might not survive. The planet might be a year away. He had heard the reports. No one was really sure what they were up against, but the enemy's capabilities were unknown. Yet they were building faster than ever, pushing forward with an urgency that bordered on desperation. They had no choice. The war for survival would come soon. The only question was when a quiet beep came from his comms unit, pulling him from his thoughts. His first officer's voice crackled through. "Admiral, we've just received the new reports from Fleet Command. The coordinates have been confirmed. The planet's location matches with the earlier intel, and it seems there's activity at the site." Hyman sighed, rubbing his temples. He had been expecting this. The reports had been coming in steadily for weeks, but this was different. The details had become more concrete, more pressing, and still, there was nothing certain about what awaited them out there. "I see," Hyman replied, his voice tinged with fatigue. "Prepare the team. We'll be moving out as soon as we finish here. It's time to see what we're really dealing with." His mind raced, his thoughts darkening. It wasn't just the enemy he was worried about. It was humanity itself. They were too spread out, too vulnerable, and there were too many unknowns. They had no idea what kind of force might be out there, waiting, ready to crush them. It had always been a possibility, but now the reality of it felt far too close for comfort. "Admiral, there's also a political briefing scheduled," came the voice of his aide. "The ministry is pushing for a full-scale expansion, more resources for the war effort. They're eager to start colonizing more worlds." Hyman grimaced. Politics. They were always pushing for more, without understanding the full scope of the risks involved. It wasn't just about spreading humanity out into the stars. It was about survival, and if they didn't understand the danger they were facing, all their efforts would be for nothing. "Not now," he muttered, his mind still on the situation unfolding at the edges of the system. "If I have to sit through another round of speeches about colonization, I might lose my mind." There was a brief chuckle from his aide, but it quickly subsided. The gravity of the situation wasn't lost on anyone. The war was coming, and everyone knew it. But no one was truly prepared for what lay ahead. Admiral Hyman turned back to the observation window, his gaze narrowing. The heavy construction ships were busy assembling the framework of the new fleet, and still, it felt like too little, too late. The ships were impressive, yes, but were they enough? Was humanity truly ready for what awaited them beyond the stars? He shook his head, forcing the thoughts aside. This wasn't the time for doubt. The fleet would be ready. They had no other choice. Prepare for the mission, he said, more to himself than anyone else. We have to find out what's out there. The silence of the station pressed in around him, and for a moment, he allowed himself to feel the weight of it all. Humanity was preparing for a fight they might not win, and he had to lead them into it. But deep down, a cold fear gnawed at him. They were on the edge of something far greater than themselves, and whatever lay out there, they would have to face it head on. Admiral Hyman stood in front of the observation window, watching the construction of the new heavy ship unfold. The ship was massive, nearly colossal in size, but to him, it seemed an insufficient measure in response to the growing threats waiting beyond their solar system. The vast structure before him was the result of years of work, effort, and innovation. Yet it seemed like just a drop in the ocean compared to what was out there. It was too little, too late. From a distance, he could hear the hum of welding machines and the sharp clang of metal on metal as construction crews worked around the clock. Every spark from the welding felt like a small cry of frustration, a reminder that humanity was pushing itself to its limits just to stay afloat, let alone protect itself. Despite its imposing structure, the ship felt fragile. He had seen too many enemies in his long career to believe that this would be enough. No matter how much they built, it would never be enough. He turned his gaze away from the construction site, his mind shifting to the future. The discovery of new threats, the unknown alien race, the shattered planet from which they had retrieved weapons, these things loomed large in his thoughts. They had managed to reverse engineer some of the technology, but even their best engineers had not yet figured out how to truly harness it. They had powerful weapons, but they still lacked the understanding to wield them effectively. That was the reality of the situation. Power without knowledge was as dangerous as no power at all, but it was the future that troubled him most. As humanity pushed deeper into space, as they sought to colonize distant worlds and mine the resources of the stars, what would they encounter? Every new world, every new frontier could hold something unknown, something dangerous waiting for them. He had read the reports: alien ships, weapons of unimaginable power, strange phenomena that defied explanation. And with each new step into the void, the risks increased. What if the next world they discovered wasn't empty, wasn't just a resource waiting to be harvested, but a fully developed civilization, hostile and prepared for war? What if they stumbled upon something more deadly than any enemy they had encountered? Hyman could not shake the feeling that the future was full of threats they could not yet comprehend. The universe was vast, and they were merely beginning to scratch the surface. For all their advancements, for all their weapons, they were still infants in the cosmic scale. What dangers lay beyond the stars? What if the very act of reaching out to the stars, of claiming new worlds for humanity, was what would provoke the worst kind of retaliation? He could feel the weight of his position pressing on him, the responsibility of not only leading the fleet, but of making decisions that could change the course of humanity's future. Every step they took into space had consequences, and not all of them would be visible immediately. The consequences of rushing into the unknown, of pushing for expansion without fully understanding what they were dealing with, could be catastrophic. The universe was not waiting for them to be ready. They had no choice but to move forward. But with each step, the unknown grew larger, and so did the risks. He closed his eyes for a moment, taking in a deep breath. The mission was approaching, and there was no turning back. But for every success, there would be new dangers. For every world they colonized, there would be another waiting to test them. Hyman knew the price of ambition in space was high, but it was a price they had no choice but to pay. Admiral Hyman sat at his desk, the soft Hum of the communications array the only sound in his otherwise silent office. The holographic screen before him flickered to life as the video conference began. The faces of the politicians appeared, each of them sitting in their sterile, well-lit offices back on Earth. Their expressions were resolute, their voices eager. With ambition. "Hyman, we've reviewed your reports," began the president of Earth, his tone firm, almost dismissive. "It's clear that the need for colonization is urgent. Resources on Earth are depleting, and the time to act is now. We need to accelerate our efforts and secure new territories in the galaxy." "With all due respect, Mr. President," Hyman responded, his voice steady but carrying a weight of unspoken concern. "I understand the urgency of resource expansion, but we cannot afford to ignore the potential threats that lie beyond our borders. The galaxy is vast, and we are barely equipped to defend ourselves. Colonization without proper military capabilities is reckless." The president's face tightened. "Admiral, we are already falling behind. Every day we wait, other factions are taking the resources we need. Expansion is the key to securing our future." A senator joined in, her face a mask of impatience. "Admiral, you're looking at this through the lens of defense, but that's not what the future requires. We've already sent expeditions into deep space, and the discovery of new technologies could give us the edge we need. Waiting for more military development could cost us everything." Hyman clenched his jaw. "You're asking for expansion without considering the risks. Our fleets are still in their infancy, and we don't yet know what we're up against out there. If we rush forward without securing proper defenses, we might be throwing ourselves into the jaws of a much greater threat." Another politician, a representative from the Military Oversight Council, spoke up. "And what do you propose, Admiral? A retreat into isolation? We can't afford to waste time while other species and factions continue their own expansion. The entire galaxy is becoming a battleground." The tension in the room grew palpable as Hyman took a deep breath. "I'm not suggesting isolation," he replied, his voice calm but unwavering. "What I'm suggesting is a focus on defense. We need to understand the technologies that are out there, what our enemies have, what we can use. If we don't, we risk everything. And I won't be a part of leading Earth into a war we're not ready for." The president leaned forward, his face hardening. "Admiral, you are the military leader. We expect you to provide us with the resources and the manpower to expand. We need your cooperation, or we'll find someone who will support our vision." Hyman felt the weight of their words settle over him, but his resolve remained firm. "I understand your vision, but I will not risk the lives of my people or the future of this planet for a hasty expansion. I will do my duty, but I will also do everything in my power to ensure our safety comes first." The politicians exchanged glances, their frustration clear. But in the end, they nodded in agreement, albeit reluctantly. The meeting ended, and the holograms blinked out one by one, leaving Hyman alone in his dimly lit office. As he sat back in his chair, the weight of the conversation lingered in the air. The decisions that lay ahead were more dangerous than any of them realized, and he was about to lead them all into the unknown. Admiral Hyman sat in his office, his hands folded on the desk as the latest briefing flickered on his terminal. The faces of the politicians had disappeared from the video conference, but their words echoed in his mind. The pressure was mounting. The demand for action was relentless. They were determined to push forward with colonization, ignoring every cautionary note he had sounded that he knew the risks. The galaxy was vast, unknown, and filled with threats far beyond what they had encountered. Yet, the politicians would not be swayed. They had their own ambitions, and to them, the future was one of expansion, no matter the cost. "I can't ignore this," Hyman muttered to himself, his eyes scanning the reports. "If we continue down this path without securing our defense, Earth will be vulnerable, and humanity will be no more than a target." But there was no time to dwell on the consequences of failure. The decision had been made. They would proceed with colonization, ignoring his warnings about the unknown threats lurking in the depths of space. Hyman's mind raced as he considered the alternatives. The political machinery would not allow for delays. He couldn't stop the march of expansion, but perhaps there was another way to prepare for the future, another way to secure Earth's survival without putting it at immediate risk. Maybe the only way forward is to gather the tools for our own protection, he thought, an idea slowly forming in his mind. The plan was simple: capture the technology of the unknown alien races before they could use it against them. He needed to prove that humanity could defend itself. He needed to bring back the knowledge of these advanced technologies, even if it meant going against the political tide. Only with that knowledge could Earth truly expand into the cosmos with any hope of surviving the dangers that lay beyond. Hyman turned to the terminal again, his fingers tapping across the keys as he sent a message to his top officers. The operation would be dangerous, but it was the only option available to him now that he needed the best of his fleet, those who had proven themselves in the most difficult of situations. He would not risk the lives of those who weren't prepared for the harsh realities they would face. He would take only those who understood what was at stake. The plan was set. If they succeeded in obtaining the alien technology, they would have the power to build a defense strong enough to protect Earth. Only then, with the new technology in hand, could they begin to talk about expanding beyond their borders. With the confidence that they would not be unprepared, Hyman took a deep breath, his decision made. This was the only course of action that would give humanity a fighting chance in the long run. If they were to survive the coming storm, this mission would be their last hope. The room was dimly lit only by the blue glow of the tactical map suspended in the center. Admiral Hyman stood silently, his arms crossed, staring at the coordinates that had ignited this entire operation. The data had been retrieved during the first wave of deep space exploration: fragmentary signals, intercepted transmissions, and a brief visual confirmation of an alien vessel in orbit around a distant, uncharted planet. That planet now lay at the center of Earth's boldest gamble. "This is the point of contact," Hyman said, tapping the image of the planet. "It's the only lead we have to the alien vessel. Whatever technology they use to destroy their enemies, we need to understand it before anyone else does." The room was silent for a moment as the weight of those words settled over the team. The operation would require precision, speed, and above all, adaptability. For this reason, Hyman had ordered that the newest class of warships be assigned to the task: vessels outfitted with reverse-engineered alien weapons, unstable but powerful. Alongside them, the reconnaissance ship Cernunos would act as the vanguard, gathering data, scanning for traps, and charting a safe approach point. Three captains stood before him: Mira Ash of the Celesta, Joe Taylor of the Cernunos, and Cedric Valdez, commander of the elite boarding unit. "We'll hit unknown territory fast and hard," Taylor said, eyes on the scan projections. "But we'll need fallback points. No one knows what's hiding around that planet." Mira Ash stepped forward next, her voice calm but firm. "I propose we preload all available weapons modules, every variant, every prototype. Once we scan the area and assess the environment, we can decide which loadouts to deploy. We'll have only one shot to get it right." Valdez nodded in agreement. "That includes close-quarters gear. If we board that vessel, I want every advantage we can get." Hyman considered their suggestions. It was risky, bringing experimental weaponry into a live mission, but it was a greater risk to walk in underprepared. "Approved," he said. "We take everything. Once we're on site, I want real-time analysis and instant tactical reconfiguration. This isn't just about reaching the target. It's about understanding it faster than it understands us." Crews across the hangars scrambled into action. Armories were opened, prototype weapon systems loaded, systems tested and retested. The engineering teams ran simulations around the clock, trying to predict every possible encounter scenario. Meanwhile, the boarding teams trained with modular gear that could be adjusted on-site within minutes of new intel. Every system on the Celesta, Cernunnos, and the assault shuttles was pushed to its limit. Final diagnostics were run. Communications were encrypted and synchronized. The fleet would fly dark. No transmissions, no signals, total radio silence until engagement. As the countdown began, Hyman took one last look at the silent tactical display. This mission was not just about survival anymore. It was a race to claim the only real strategic advantage Earth might ever get in the coming age of space warfare. And it was about to begin. The command deck was dim, lit by cold interface lights and the glow of status monitors. Admiral Hyman sat alone at the end of the long conference table, staring at the digital readouts scrolling across the embedded screen. The operation was ready on paper, but in his chest, doubt gnawed at the foundations of certainty. This could be humanity's only real chance. And it could be their doom. The door slid open with a hiss. Commander Iwata stepped in, followed by Operations Chief Roland. "We ran another sweep of the navigation matrices," Roland reported. "There's still interference from the quantum graviton layer. The jump will be turbulent." Hyman nodded slowly. "Noted. Continue stabilization protocols. What's the margin of error on system alignment?" 5% drift over extended transit," Iwata answered. "Manageable, but risky. One miscalculation and the whole strike group could re-emerge inside a gravity well." Hyman stood and moved to the central holo display, bringing up the fleet overview. Green status lights blinked across most systems, but a few pulsed yellow. He glanced at his officers. "And if we're wrong? If the ship isn't hostile, or worse, if we're seen as the aggressors?" Silence fell. Iwata exchanged a look with Roland. Finally, she spoke. "There's no perfect move, Admiral. Only preparation." Hyman exhaled, long and slow. In the adjoining bays, crews ran full simulation cycles. Boarding teams practiced synchronized entry, moving in fluid patterns. Engineering crews double-checked core containment systems. On the upper decks, pilots and weapons officers drilled fire control routines, reacting to mock threats in microseconds. The intensity was relentless, but it still might not be enough. Later that day, Hyman stood on the observation deck, where he had called a final briefing with the three captains. The massive viewing window displayed Saturn's rings in fractured beauty behind the shape of the waiting fleet. Mira Ash, her posture straight and composed, listened silently as Hyman outlined the timing of the jump and the initial contact plan. Joe Taylor leaned forward, studying the tactical overlays with a practiced eye, while Cedric Valdez stood with arms crossed, absorbing every word without reaction. "The mission is surgical," Hyman concluded. "Get in, analyze, extract. If contact becomes conflict, we fall back immediately. No heroics." "Understood." All three captains nodded. "And one more thing," Hyman said. His voice dropped lower. "If this fails, if we're discovered, or it turns into war, we might not get another chance to prepare Earth." For a heartbeat, no one answered. Then Taylor broke the silence. "Then we make sure it doesn't fail." As they departed, Hyman remained alone, watching the dark silhouette of the fleet in the cold void. That he wasn't afraid of dying. He was afraid of being wrong. The edge of transition, the ships emerged one by one from the black veil of fold space, their hulls shimmering faintly as spatial turbulence dissipated. From a distance, they resembled small stars gliding into formation. The first signs of humanity's reach into a part of the galaxy still unmarked on most maps. The system ahead was unassuming at first glance. A faded yellow sun at the center, ringed by planets with orbits almost too stable. But the third planet bore a silent, pulsing signature, faint energy readings, mineral heat trails, and electromagnetic noise inconsistent with natural geology. Captain. Mira Esh stood on the command deck of the Celesta, her eyes tracing data points floating midair above the tactical display. Confirm fleet reversion, she ordered. All ships accounted for. Came the response from her XO, Lieutenant Rao. No deviation in formation. 2 more ships fell into view. The Cernunos, the recon frigate led by Joe Taylor, and Omen, the smaller but bristling vessel commanded by Cedric Valdez, the boarding unit's tactical leader. Open secured fleet channel, Mira said. A soft chime answered, fleet command active. Joe Taylor's voice echoed through the narrowband channel, calm and dry. No anomalies on fold emergence. We're clear so far. Telemetry stable. Minimal gravitational distortion, added Valdez. Hell of a quiet welcome. Myra's tone was more cautious. Keep it that way. Begin EM drift positioning. We stay dark until we have a red on orbital vectors. In the background, the navigation officers silently ran trajectory alignments, keeping the ships hidden just beyond detection range. There would be no active scans yet, no emissions stronger than background noise. From his flagship in the Sol system, Admiral Renzo Hyman monitored their transition from a secure command link. He said nothing for several minutes, just listened as his captains coordinated, each movement deliberate. Finally, he spoke. Gentlemen, Commander Esh, you've reached the outer perimeter of the target system. No contact is the best contact. For now, proceed with passive recon only. We don't reveal our hand until we're ready. Yes, sir, Mira replied, then muted her mic. No pressure, she murmured, mostly to herself. Out here, in the black silence between stars, the void felt heavier. Not just the distance from Earth, but the anticipation. Every step closer was a step deeper into the unknown, and something ahead was watching. Of that, Mira was increasingly certain. The command deck of the Celesta hummed with quiet tension. Dimmed lights cast a pale blue hue over the crew, who moved with methodical precision. Mira stood near the main holodeck, hands behind her back, eyes scanning the slowly rotating image of the alien system. A mining barge just departed the surface again, reported Ensign Ruvel, adjusting the orbital tracking lines on the display. Escorted by one of the military vessels, same pattern as before. Are we sure this is a pattern? Asked Taylor from the side. His arms were folded, and his eyes betrayed a veteran's instinctive caution. Could be misdirection. We've observed 3 cycles already, Mira replied. She pointed to the map trajectory. They mine, they load, and one of the cruisers escorts the barge to the outer region, then returns solo. A young officer approached with a slight frown. We're detecting fluctuating energy spikes from the surface. Could be related to processing, or some kind of shielding mechanism. Mira turned her head, considering. How long until the barge completes the next cycle? About 6 days, came the reply. If they hold the pattern, we'll confirm with at least one more run before we move. She nodded, then added, we need to be sure before we commit. Aren't we risking exposure just by being here this long? Asked Myra's XO, Commander Elian Voss. He leaned closer to the holomap. Even with the new stealth fields, a sharp enough scan might still catch us. We're far enough out in the belt, Mira answered calmly. Radiation interference helps mask us. Besides, they don't seem to be actively scanning the region. And what if they start? Voss's tone was quiet, but insistent. We're banking a lot on assumptions. Mira met his gaze, her voice steady. Then we vanish. But until then, we learn everything we can. Suddenly, the channel from the Cernunos opened with a crackle. Taylor's voice came through, dry as ever. We've planted the last of the proximity beacons. They're active and synced. Good, Mira replied. Let's hope we won't need them. From the shadows of the observation platform, Captain Valdez watched the proceedings in silence. His arms were crossed, and his face was unreadable. "This is a long game we're playing," he murmured to no one. "In particular, let's hope our hand's worth something." The asteroid belt stretched like a broken halo around the distant star, chunks of rock drifting in slow, silent orbits. It was the perfect cover, treacherous, dense, and masking their presence from long-range scans. Captain Joe Taylor, standing on the bridge of Cernunnos, peered at the tactical display, the glimmering clusters of asteroids layered with coded indicators. "This section here," he said, tapping the display. "Sparse enough for deployment, dense enough to hide them." Commander Urev, his systems officer, nodded in agreement. "Magnetic anchors will hold them in place. If we synchronize detonation, they'll light up the entire vector." Taylor exhaled slowly, hands behind his back. "No active propulsion, no emissions. They stay dormant until we flip the switch. I want them undetectable completely." He turned toward the rest of the bridge. "Ready the drones for deployment. Keep their burn signatures to a minimum. We'll begin planting mines in Grid Alpha through Delta." Meanwhile, aboard Celesta, Mira and Valdez reviewed the plan. The 3D projection between them showed the planet, the barge's expected trajectory, and the positioning of the hostile escort. Valdez rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "Your minds will only work if they follow this path exactly." "They have, every time," Mira replied. 8 cycles. They're creatures of routine, or at least the logic they follow is. Assuming their behavior is predictable," he countered. "That assumption gets people killed, which is why we're not banking everything on it," she said, pointing to an alternate vector on the projection. "If the primary doesn't work, we have a fallback route to intercept." "That's your job." Valdez gave a short nod. "My team is ready. Close-range boarding, breach tactics. If we move fast, we can get in and out before the second ship returns." In the war room aboard Titan Command, Hyman monitored the operations. Progress via encrypted uplinks. Watching the data flow in, telemetry, drone feeds, system readouts, he felt the tight coil of anxiety in his chest. "Too smooth," he muttered. "Too quiet." His adjutant glanced up from the status board. "Sir?" "Nothing. Just a feeling." He straightened. "Maintain signal silence. If the enemy's listening, we won't give them anything to trace." On Cernunnos, Taylor watched as the final drone returned, its mission complete. The mines were in place, 56 of them, scattered in a lethal net across the route the alien escort always took. That he nodded to Urev. "Now we wait. The moment they move that barge again, we strike." "And if they change pattern?" Urev asked. That Taylor's expression didn't change. "Then we adapt. Or we die trying." The stars barely twinkled beyond the faint haze of the asteroid belt. Hidden among the drifting rocks, Celesta, Cernunnos, and the silent bulk of the assault ship Vortex maintained minimal energy signatures. All lights were dimmed. Engines idle. It was a waiting game now. Captain Mira Esch leaned over the tactical console aboard Celesta, her gaze fixed on a slow, pulsing line tracking the enemy barge's previous route. 14 days, she murmured. Same window, same vector, same escort formation. Her second-in-command, Lieutenant Carmen, looked over her shoulder. "Do you think it's deliberate? A routine? Or bait?" Mira didn't answer immediately. Her fingers tapped the console in thought. "It's hard to tell. They're methodical, efficient. It could be logistics. Or it could be a trap to see if anyone's watching." Carmen exhaled. "Slowly. And we are." Mira stood straight and moved toward the center of the bridge, signaled to Vortex and Cernunnos. "No changes in patterns. We wait for confirmation on the next departure. The plan stays." Meanwhile, on Vortex, Cedric Valdez paced along the narrow corridor of the ship's training deck. Behind him, his squad ran synchronized drills in silence, armored boots striking metal in perfect rhythm. That he turned to watch them. "Good. Again. I want breach routines perfect. No hesitation. Sergeant Lennox jogged up to him between runs, removing his helmet. Sir, we've run this scenario 17 times. The men are ready. Valdez stared at him, and they'll run it 17 more. If something goes wrong inside that alien hull, we won't have time to think. Only act. He stepped into the armory, where racks of new experimental weapons, pulse rifles, magnetic grenades, adaptive armor, gleamed under the low lights. Engineers were still running diagnostics, still not fully tested. One of them warned. Valdez gave a cold nod. Neither are they. Back aboard Cernunos, Taylor was alone on the observation deck, staring into the black void beyond the viewport. His reflection looked older than he remembered. Tired, warned out a soft chime brought him back. Telemetry update, the AI chimed. No deviation from projected flight paths. Estimated barge departure in 16 hours. Taylor didn't respond. He simply watched as a faint glimmer of movement caught his eye. The enemy barge, docking at the far side of the station, its escort moving into place. 16 hours later, the window opened. From their concealed vantage point, the crew of the Cernunos watched as the alien barge undocked from the sprawling industrial structure. It moved with deliberate grace, slowly ascending into orbit, followed closely by the smaller of the two escort warships, eyeing the shadow of a passing asteroid. Taylor adjusted his seat and activated comms, confirming trajectory. Barge is outbound. Escort pattern is consistent with previous transits. We're go. On the Celesta, Myra's eyes narrowed. All right. Begin Phase 1. Vortex moves into position behind the belt. Cernunos, maintain shadow path at 15 clicks. We'll enter the gap in their sensor coverage when they hit the arc around the planet. The ships stirred into motion, slow and silent. Like predators preparing to strike in the tactical bay aboard Vortex. Cedric Valles pulled on his combat armor, magnetic latches locking into place with a heavy click. This is it. Tight comms, no noise, no mistakes. Lennox grinned beside him, face partially obscured by his helmet. We've rehearsed this to death, boss. Time to see if the ghosts bleed. Valles gave a curt nod and turned to the weapons tech. Package 1 and 2. Armed and primed, sir. EMP and penetration loadout. All synced to command signal. Good. Let's make it count. Meanwhile, Mira directed her ship toward the outer curve of the planet's orbital ring. Engage visual cloaking. Keep our EM signature buried. They've got scouts, even if we haven't seen them. Carmine leaned over his station. Heat bloom from the escort's engines is creating distortion. It'll mask our approach if we stay tucked behind the debris. Mira allowed herself a thin smile. Then let's dance in their shadow. Minutes passed like hours as the ships drifted closer to their interception vector. Every member of each crew remained locked in silence, breaths held, pulses steady. Then a ping, soft but unmistakable, blinked on Taylor's display. They're hitting the orbital apex. Beginning deceleration. Escort is slowing with them. Mira nodded firmly. That's our window. Vortex, proceed to mining field and deploy charges. Time the detonation to coincide with their next course correction. On the Vortex, the side hatch opened with a hiss, and two drones slipped out into the asteroid field, gliding through the darkness. Each carried a payload of high-yield EM mines. Modified versions of recovered alien tech, still partially untested. Cedric's voice echoed through the comm. Drones deployed. Charges arming. Back on the Celesta, Mira folded her arms. If those charges work the way the lab boys promised, that escort's going to lose its eyes and ears long enough for us to breach. Taylor's voice came through, low and tensed. And if they don't, Mira didn't flinch. Then we improvise. But we're not backing down now. Through the darkness, the pieces moved into place. Silent, precise, deadly. The trap was nearly set. Everything around them was dark and calm. Only the faint hum of the engine reminded them that they were indeed moving through the vast, lifeless void of space. The crew of Celeste knew that the time for a decision had come. Everything was going according to plan, but the sense of foreboding grew with every minute of waiting. Finally, the barge with the oar lifted off from the planet and aligned with the acceleration vector. Everything was going according to schedule. Calmly, as during training, the alien escort ship joined the barge, beginning its escort as soon as the barge passed the planet's orbit and headed toward the asteroid belt. This was their chance. The unidentified ships began their course along the belt's edge, and when their trajectory was directly over the asteroid belt, they activated the electromagnetic mines. The mines detonated instantly. The electromagnetic blast followed the calculated trajectory, and in a moment, the enemy ships lost all propulsion. One of them began spinning uncontrollably, like a ball thrown into space, its movements becoming erratic. Soon, its motion began to slow down. The barge, apparently, also lost power, and its course began to decelerate. The time had come. Mira exhaled in relief, but she didn't relax. They were on schedule. We're on track, she said, her eyes never leaving the screen. Prepare for the jump. The crew initiated the transition system. The coordinates appeared on the screen, and within seconds, the ship jumped to the location where one of the alien ships, now losing stabilization, was still spinning. That it all happened so quickly that they didn't even feel the transition to the new space. They found themselves near the enemy ship. In an instant, the boarding team began moving towards the alien vessel on the shuttle. Magnetic clamps securely fastened the shuttle to the alien ship. Autonomous drones began cutting a path through the ship's hull with wave cutters. In a minute, the path was clear. The unknown atmosphere continued to leak from the ship as the first member of the team entered through the newly made hole. When they entered, it was nothing like they had expected or prepared for during training. They found themselves in a large hive with honeycomb-like structures. Alien constructions, unfamiliar to human eyes, created symmetrical forms that reflected the existence of this race. Inside, there was a silence that unsettled everyone. Only, in the distant corners floated dark silhouettes. The creatures, which had not been visible before, now fully revealed themselves. They floated weightlessly, frozen in the cosmic cold, just like their alien ship. These creatures resembled giant ants. It seemed the attack had caught them by surprise, and with the decompression, all of them had perished without a chance to fight. They remained motionless, as though frozen in space, and their bodies appeared so stiff and covered in armor that they looked more like dead statues than living beings. But deep in the heart of the ship, right near the command bridge, the situation was different. The boarding team continued to advance through the dead silence. And then, they came face to face with a group of alien creatures. But these ants were wearing protective suits that resembled spacesuits, designed to withstand the vacuum of space and internal threats. Fire, Cedric ordered, eyeing the strange creatures that began shooting. Mira also realized that this was no longer just a boarding operation. This was a confrontation with an alien, hostile mind. A real battle began inside the ship, and even though the aliens were in less than ideal conditions, their protective suits gave them a chance to resist. Ahead of them lay true trials, and it was uncertain if they would make it out with minimal losses. The silence of space enveloped them as the crew of the Celeste struggled with the new reality of the situation. The alien vessel, now tethered to the cruiser by the magnetic clamps, was a strange, unfamiliar presence, its surface reflecting the cold, distant stars. The crux of the mission had been reached, but the difficulties were only beginning. The cruiser, with its advanced propulsion system, began to pick up speed, but the alien ship's erratic movement made it clear that this would not be a smooth ride. Despite the cruiser's superior power, the alien ship, tethered and resisting the motion, caused the entire formation to shift unevenly. It was as if the alien ship was trying to drag them back into the void, its inertia fighting against. The momentum of the cruiser, Myra's knuckles turned white as she gripped her station tightly. This isn't going to be easy. We need to get clear of the planet, she muttered, watching the slow, jagged movements of the alien vessel on the monitor. Keep the course steady, Hyman ordered, his voice calm but with a trace of tension. We need to get far enough from the planet before making the jump. The scout ship, on the other hand, was not hindered by the heavy tether. It had already made a sharp turn and was accelerating in the opposite direction, darting away from the cruiser and the alien vessel. The scout was faster, agile, designed for this very kind of work. It quickly adjusted its trajectory, intent on covering any potential escape routes and tracking the progress of the two ships behind it. Back on the cruiser, the crew struggled against the slow, grinding process of moving two ships, one unwillingly along for the ride. The magnetic clamps held firm, but there was still the constant risk that one wrong maneuver could result in the entire formation being thrown into a dangerous spin. "Come on," muttered one of the engineers, watching the feedback from the systems. As the cruiser struggled to maintain a proper vector. "This is going to be tight." The cruiser's engines fired once more, the ship lurching forward. The alien vessel, a relic of a different, foreign technology, groaned as it was dragged through the vastness of space, its thrusters sputtering to maintain control. The cruiser's engines worked in overdrive, the sound of their power becoming a familiar hum beneath their feet. "We've got to get clear of the asteroid belt," Mira said. "If we jump now, we risk being detected." "Agreed," Hyman replied. "Let's keep pushing until we're out of the range." The scout ship's report came through, confirming they had enough distance now. The moment of truth would be when the cruiser and its reluctant passenger were far enough from the planet to jump into the dark void of space, where they could disappear without a trace. The two ships, one tethered, the other free, raced toward the edge of the system. The real challenge lay ahead. Would the cruiser and its alien companion be able to make the jump safely, or would the struggle prove too much for the fragile bond between them? Now, with the future uncertain, the crew of the Celeste could only hope their plan would hold. The cruiser Celesta, firmly locked with the alien vessel by magnetic clamps, completed its jump into hyperspace. The strain of towing the captured ship was evident. Even advanced inertial dampeners struggled to compensate for the uneven mass. The hull vibrated faintly as the engines maintained a steady acceleration toward their rendezvous point, far behind. The scout ship Cernunos executed its own jump on a different vector, confusing any possible pursuers and ensuring the trail back to Earth would remain hidden. After several tense hours, both ships regrouped near a remote waypoint on the outer edge of the solar system. On the bridge of the Celesta, Admiral Hyman appeared via secure transmission. His face, usually stern, carried a rare glint of satisfaction. "You've done exceptional work," Hyman said, addressing the captains. "Earth owes you a debt. Your actions today may have secured the future of our kind." The transfer of the alien ship was formalized. Under escort, it was directed toward a hidden orbital shipyard where a team of the best scientists and engineers awaited its arrival. There, they would begin the careful process of studying and decoding the secrets of the foreign technology. Meanwhile, in a far-off region of the galaxy, deep within a hive-structured station carved into a barren asteroid, a figure cloaked in shadow listened to a grim report. "One of our colonies was attacked," the subordinate said, kneeling. "The harvesting station was breached. One of our ships has been stolen." The namesnick of the swarm sat silently for a long moment, his mandibles twitching slightly in the dim light. Finally, his voice echoed through the chamber, sharp and resonant. "Find them. Find those who dared," he ordered. No one defies the swarm and lives. The room trembled as the namesnick's decree echoed into the depths of the hive, marking the beginning of a hunt that would soon span across the stars.